Tropical Storm Debby has formed in the Gulf of Mexico with its eyes set on the southeast and eventually on to the Carolinas. The latest from the National Hurricane Center, plus ongoing severe weather in the Carolinas on this Saturday. This is a live special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Streaming live on this Saturday across Facebook, YouTube, and the networks of the Carolina Weather Group. I'm James Brierton. We've got Jared Smith with us from Charleston, South Carolina, and I know we're also streaming right now on Charleston Weather. We are tracking the latest with what is now officially Tropical Storm Debby. What yesterday got deemed a potential tropical cyclone and then eventually a tropical depression numero 4 is now Tropical Storm Debby. We are also pausing just a moment to welcome in viewers who have been watching live severe weather throughout the day on the Carolina Weather Net, and they're now joining us for this live streaming edition of the Carolina Weather Group, so we say hello to them too. Just after 5 o'clock here on August the 3rd, 2024, let's get you the latest on Tropical Storm Debby. The National Hurricane Center making the distinction here at the 5 o'clock hour to officially deem Tropical Storm Debby, having formed in the Gulf of Mexico, will make its way across the Gulf and over to the panhandle of Florida by the time we look ahead here at the forecast cone for Monday. Crossing across Florida and portions of coastal Georgia, then lingering off the coast of the Carolinas. We could be seeing the first tropical storm force winds to arrive in the Carolinas by Monday, and that will set us up for what will become a flash flooding and coastal threat from this storm. We could see upwards of 8, 9, maybe even 12 inches of rain with this storm. It's going to bring flash flooding all along the Carolina coast and even inland into portions like Charlotte, Columbia, and other portions of the Carolinas. We will have the latest on Tropical Storm Debby as the forecast develops on our Carolina Weather Group YouTube channel. Bringing back in my colleague, Jared Smith. Jared, you are right smack in the bullseye of what seems to be quickly escalating into a more serious situation than it seemed just days ago. What's the mood like there in Charleston?
I have a feeling it is going to shift from general, we've seen this before, to probably a little bit more concern. This is, I had the track up here a second ago, and again, I just want to, I want to point out that, we've got it coming out of the Gulf. It's now going to make landfall as a hurricane, by the way. So that is now explicitly forecast. Probably go out over the water, and then they're expecting it to make landfall just south of Charleston. Of course, this could change. Look how big, that's a very wide cone here. A lot of uncertainty. The uncertainty is the issue. But what certainly seems to be the biggest concern here is the rain. And I don't know that we've gotten enough yet. I really don't know if there's enough that we can say just yet about, the rain potential here. And we really need to get folks starting to think about that in a big way. Some of the rain totals that you were showing there were somewhat reminiscent of October of 2015. Now,
absolutely.
Now we've got 15 to 20 inches in a lot of spots in October 2015. The Hurricane Center and WPC collaboration now going 12 to 16 and maybe higher in some spots. And that is significant. That's very concerning for the coast, especially if it just hangs out there. And with that, and with that new track too. The other concern that I have is prolonged surge. I mean, we may be dealing with the surge issue for days. The good news is that we'll be on the waning side of a new moon, and it's at apogee and not perigee. When we had October 2015, when we had the historic flood then, the moon was at perigee, which meant it was closer, and that drove the tides up even higher. But we still could see, starting to see the surge picture begin to come together here. And it's something that we need to be taking a little bit more seriously. It is certainly looking, somewhat concerning. Maybe as soon as tomorrow night, even with a possible predecessor rain event, with a front that stalled out, which I know we're going to talk about here in a minute, because that's giving you guys severe weather problems up in the Midlands into the Piedmont.
Yeah, we're not going to get out of the special edition of the Carolina Weather Group without talking about these ongoing severe storms across portions of both North Carolina and South Carolina right now, including considerable flash flood warnings in the Durham and the Columbia metro areas. It has turned out to be, Jared, a very busy weather Saturday here at Carolina Weather Group HQ.
Yeah, absolutely. Just putting it back into motion here, you can see that we've got numerous warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, special weather statements, just a whole big mess. And yeah, and as you mentioned, we do have that considerable flash flood potential here in the Columbia metro area. So yeah, not a great not a great Saturday to do anything outside.
I think your point is so valid, because it may not seem obvious right now, but what's happening outside our windows right now is going to impact where Debby can and cannot go. And when we think about that, that is actually going to be the $1 million question with this storm, is where does this storm go or doesn't go? Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich at WCNC Charlotte tweeted out this loop earlier. You know, computer models can change, but when we look at some of the precipitable water here, you can see, and again, this was from earlier, so it could have changed even since this morning. You can see how it slows down as it spins off the coast of Charleston and not only deluges you guys there, but then even tries to make its way inland a bit. This could be with us for days because of the fact that there will just be no steering for this storm to go elsewhere. When we look at Brad's map, this is from earlier. It will now need to be updated now that we have Debby now and a Category 1 hurricane making landfall there in the Panhandle. But you can see just how that track lingers and weaves and moves pretty slowly. The fact, Jared, that this thing enters the picture on Monday or Tuesday and could still be impacting the Carolinas by Friday or Saturday, this is a slow-moving flash flood rain event.
Absolutely. I mean, this gives you, I think the closest thing that we can think of is when Florence stalled out. That might be the closest analog that we have here. When I look at how the steering currents will collapse or appear that they will collapse, I think about Harvey. I think about our folks, in Texas.
Sure.
That's a major concern.
I'm thinking back to Lumberton. I'm thinking back to, with Matthew and some of that flooding that we had. The coast is definitely in on this flash flooding. I don't want to downplay that. But as a guy who lives further inland, I'm also wondering about the portions of the South Carolina Sandhills or the greater Fayetteville area in North Carolina. How is it going to be able to handle all of this rain that is going to come persistently after all of the rain we're getting now? I mean, man, when we said we wanted the drought to go away, this is not what we had in mind.
No, we typically don't want droughts to end all at once. That's not ideal, to put it mildly. But yeah, I mean, if we take a look at, we'll pull the kind of the WPC map back up here. I mean, you can see, this is a 10 inches of rain, 10 plus. Charleston, Savannah, Brunswick, Georgia. I mean, we're going to get pretty significant rains all the way up into Columbia, probably getting into Greenville and those spots as well. So I mean, we can't necessarily poo-poo on that either. I mean, I agree with you. Like, there is certainly a concern, especially with potential for upslope flow, even potential for if that front is going to stall out and just hang out, the intersection of that front and that tropical moisture, I mean, it could be, it's going to be a pretty widespread event across the Carolinas. And again, it's going to hang around for days. Now it looks like we're going to take the brunt of it at the coast, but I really wouldn't sleep on it. Wilmington, New Bern, Raleigh, I would not, in the Sandhills, Charlotte, I would not sleep on this.
And Jared, it does feel like in just 3 days, we've traveled a long distance from where we were on our Wednesday night show. Because you mentioned not poo-pooing it, and while I don't think we poo-pooed it, I know when I was sitting on this chair on Wednesday night for our weekly show, my threat level was so much lower. We were talking about maybe minor or moderate coastal impacts, maybe flooding along the coast. Again, not to downplay the coast, but we're bringing in a much bigger area now into this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the original thought was, it might skirt the coast and get out of here. That's kind of the sense that I was getting just a few days ago. Clearly, it looks like that's very probably not going to be the case. Now, there's plenty of uncertainty here. There's, models could move around. There's a lot that can still happen. We have time. But as we get more data in there, once this storm gets away from Cuba and we can feel comfortable flying hurricane hunters into it, flying a reconnaissance plane over Cuba is not exactly the best thing that we can do. But once we start getting some of that hurricane hunter
science with Cuba,
yeah, I know, but that's feelings. But but one thing that we'll want to look at, once we start getting that hurricane hunter data in there, and once we start, I'm not sure if the Weather Service's plans to do, 4-day soundings, four times a day soundings, things like that. But we will start getting better data in there. We're going to start understanding what's going on. And I also will say this. It's going over 92-degree water in the Gulf.
Oh, my goodness. That water has just been waiting for something to come along. It's just untapped fuel.
Yeah.
This early into what is, we're still climbing upward towards the peak of hurricane season. That comes in September, but this August timeframe now is when things really start ratcheting it up. I do want to let anybody know who's watching live with us on YouTube, Facebook. Drop a comment in. We'll try to address as many questions, comments as we can during this live show. And if we get some later on, we'll try to answer those as well, too. And I know some of you right now are listening to our audio podcast, and we appreciate you tuning in for that. While Jared and I will try to paint a picture as best we can with a lot of the maps, the audio podcast is also a great place to go subscribe, because when we get into a weather situation where we might have prolonged power outages, audio podcasts don't take a lot of battery power, don't take a lot of data, and so we'll be pumping out extra updates on that feed too, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is you may get your audio podcast. Coming up in a few minutes, we'll talk about the live severe weather that's happening across the Carolinas. Right now on this Saturday, we just got a new considerable flash flood warning for the Triangle area in North Carolina. But Jared, before we move too far away from Debbie, the forecast is rapidly developing, and here at 5 o'clock, as the National Hurricane Center has put out a new forecast cone, which they curate as meteorologists, we're also looking at new computer models that give us an idea of what could happen, different variables, different scenarios. What are those looking like?
Let's get them out. So let's go to the meteorological pasta, if you will, spaghetti models. I've left the official track overlaid here, but you can see that there's good agreement. I don't know what these guys are doing. They're smoking something, but there's good agreement roughly up to the panhandle of Florida into the Big Bend here. Decent agreement there, but then we start getting a little out of whack. Some of the models, like Canadian in particular, keeps it inland. And honestly, even though inland would mean the risk for, it would push the rain threat inland, and it would push the tornado threat too, a little bit closer to the coast, which we would rather not see. Pushing it inland keeps it off the water, keeps it out of the water. But we have a fair bit of, the global ensembles are bringing it over the water, at least for a time. It may hang out for a while. And you see this just really sharp turn here in the Hurricane Center forecast around Charleston. But again, I think the thing that I want, folks to realize is that there still are a wide array of probabilities here. The general idea is that we should expect a stalling storm and a lot of rain, but the devil is going to be in the details of this track forecast here. And that's where, that's where I want to see, we're going to need a little bit more time. We're going to need a little bit more data to come in to really fully understand that, because we do have some that are just taking it out of here. We have some of those members too. So again, I want folks to understand that there is a lot of uncertainty beyond the next couple days. Next week there's a lot of time for things to move around. There's a lot of different solutions still that appear to be on the table. When you have steering currents break down like this, a lot of weird things can happen. So it's just something that we're going to have to watch closely.
Yeah, we're watching it closely. The National Hurricane Center, of course, in Miami is also watching it closely. In just the last 3 minutes, they held a briefing on their YouTube page, and they are the premier experts on this. So, right now, we want to take you to Miami to get an update from the National Hurricane Center. And Jared and I will be back in with you in about 6 minutes. I believe the audio will play here momentarily.
Welcome back, everybody, to the 5 p.m. update on now Tropical Storm Debby. So let's start first with why it became a tropical storm and acquired the name Debby. If you look here at the visible satellite imagery, you can see that the center of circulation has finally pulled away from the western side of Cuba, and it's starting to fill in. You're starting to see better structure in the satellite imagery, and it has now become a tropical storm and acquired the name Debby. Now, where is Debby going to go? Let's take a look at the overall track, moving off towards the north, making landfall somewhere in the Florida Big Bend area as a hurricane. This is important. There's an H on here as a hurricane, and there's now a hurricane warning. This is new for 5 p.m., a hurricane warning for portions of the Florida Panhandle, flanked on either side here by tropical storm warnings. So the blue area here denoting tropical storm warnings basically along the entire Florida west coast. Now, this is the poster child for not focusing on the cone. Look how far these watches and warnings extend outside of the cone, and maybe you're asking yourself why. Well, this orange area down here denotes the current size of the tropical storm force winds. See how it's sort of skewed off to the right here. So if you sort of march those tropical storm force winds along the center of the cone or even to the east side of the cone, you can see how it's going to scrape the west side of the Florida Peninsula, producing tropical storm force winds. So even if you're out of the cone, if you're in this colored area, you have to take this seriously for a host of hazards, not just the wind. And we'll come back to the other hazards in a second. Now, what happens after it moves over the Florida Panhandle, northern Florida here? It moves up in here somewhere over the southeastern United States coast or just offshore and basically slows down to a crawl or even stalls. Now, this is not good regardless of the strength that it may have out here, and we're going to come back to that in a second. So let's look at, we also have now a storm surge warning in effect for, again, portions of the Florida Panhandle. This darker purple here is a storm surge warning. And this is the reason some of you may have been asked to evacuate. Some of you are under evacuation orders. If you are under those evacuation orders, it is time to take those seriously because we evacuate for storm surge. In terms of the maximum storm surge, you start to see why you're under a storm surge warning. Some of these values have increased over the last 24 hours as it became clearer and clearer that Debby was going to become a hurricane before making landfall. You can see here some of the areas up here, the nature coast of Florida, Big Bend, 4 to 7 feet. 4 to 7 feet. Now, I stand 6 feet tall, so that's potentially over my head. You can see why evacuations are in play for this area. Now, that's not the only hazard we got to worry about. I said earlier that it's going to get up in here somewhere over the southeast United States or just off the coast and basically slow down or stall. This, if this materializes, this is going to be a big rain event and a big flooding event. This is a classic case of why you cannot focus on the wind speed or the peak wind intensity of the Saffir-Simpson scale. A lot of you are going to see this and say it's just a tropical storm, and that's going to be a mistake because as it slows to a crawl or moves very, very slowly here, it's just going to dump a lot of rain, and especially if you're in this red area here. This red area here, big risk of flooding. So big risk of flooding starting as soon as Monday, lasting several days next week. Why? Look at how much rain we could potentially get out of this system. Over 10 inches of rain possible in these areas here. And if there's any sort of onshore flow around the eastern side, and there's some storm surge that goes with this heavy rain. We're just going to have a big flooding event along the southeast coast. So please do not look at this as just a tropical storm. This has the potential to be a major flood event for somebody here in the southeast. Obviously, the details are yet to be determined, but this is why we need you to stay tuned frequently through the weekend. Come back, we'll have more live streams for you tomorrow at 11 and 5 p.m. again. And as always, you can get updates from us at any time at hurricanes.gov.
That's the latest from the National Hurricane Center, the premier experts in tracking all things. And, a lot of this update right now from them, Jared, of course, focused on Florida, where the impacts will be felt first, especially now that they've upgraded that landfall to a Category 1 hurricane. He did mention East Coast flooding, and that is what we will be watching very closely here at the Carolina Weather Group for the chance of seeing upwards of a foot of rain in portions of the Carolinas as we head into next week. An event that, as we've been telling you, could last 4 days. Do not let your guard down. We'll continue to bring you updates as we get it. Forecast from the Hurricane Center will be updated at least 4 times a day. Jared, any closing thoughts on Debby before we move back to what is happening outside our windows right now?
I think the most important thing, James, is that folks stay tuned. That folks just, they stay up to date with the weather. This is, this is one of those that can take you by surprise if you're not paying attention, and we need folks to be paying attention because tropical storms with rain can be, disastrous.
Yeah.
They can be very, very bad. And if this pans out the way it looks like it's going to, this could be very, very bad for some folks. We hope that's not the case. I hope I'm wrong. I think we all hope that we're wrong, but we've got to be ready for that potential for flooding and even power outages.
Yeah.
I think, the winds haven't gotten a lot of attention here, but depending on the track, winds could become more of a factor. Power outages, surge, lots of things. So if you're in a flood prone area, now's the time to be taking those precautions, getting ready for what could be a pretty long week. Maybe stock up on some food, things like that. Again, not expecting, complete and total devastation, but you'll just feel more comfortable. Honestly, I think that's a big part of it too, is your comfort. So make sure you're doing those things for yourself. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself and getting ready for this. I know after this, I'm going to the store. I gotta pick up some things for myself. So there you go.
Yep. A couple days where you might be without power. Stay cool. If you need a way to stay cool. Medicine, food, and the like. It's 5:30 on this very busy Saturday, August the 3rd, 2024, and a special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Let's move to what is happening outside right now. Across the Carolinas, we have numerous severe thunderstorm warnings and also flash flood warnings that have the considerable tag. That is a tier 2 out of 3 in terms of flash flooding. And you can see some of those right now in South Carolina. A lot of them in Columbia, not surprisingly, getting in on this afternoon showers and thunderstorms that have quickly turned into these considerable flash flood warnings, especially on the north side of the city. We had reports of flooding coming in from the north side of Columbia. And I actually just want to show you right now video we've just gotten in from the National Weather Service about 15 minutes ago in Blythewood, which is the north side of Columbia. And I'm going to download it, Jared, and then I'm going to play it because I don't want to screen share directly out of National Weather Service chat. But on the top of your screen there, you can see Blythewood, where this flash flood warning is ongoing and of a considerable nature. It also now extends out towards Elgin and Camden as those lines of storms continue off to the east. We have to keep in mind that these storms are moving here at a northeast angle at a pretty good clip. And so once one passes, another one might come in right behind it. And so as you are managing your Saturday evening, do be aware that we could end up with one storm after another storm. Here's the video we just got in from the National Weather Service of flooding right now happening in the Blythewood area of South Carolina. This is just north of Columbia. And if we play that for you one more time, you can see how the water is just flowing down onto the roadway. The best part about this, Jared, these two motorists facing each other here on this small road, they have come to a stop. They are not driving into the water because you cannot tell the depth of that water. A good reminder, turn around, don't drown when you encounter a flooded roadway. We'll take you back out now to radar, and you can see that we have continued showers and thunderstorms across that greater Columbia area. We'll make our way north first a little bit because I want to show you what Jared also has up here on the radar is that bigger yellow area. That is a severe thunderstorm watch. That is where we expect the bulk of the storms now. We'll wait to see if this gets extended off to the east. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. So if you're watching from upstate South Carolina, in Charlotte, in Raleigh, in Greensboro, right now you are under that severe thunderstorm watch, which goes until 9 o'clock tonight because of that threat for thunderstorms with 1-inch size hail, 70-mile-per-hour winds. I want to note 70-mile-per-hour winds. That would be a stronger than average severe thunderstorm. You only need 60 miles per hour in order to get what the Weather Service considers to be a severe thunderstorm. Let's make our way into the Raleigh area, the Triangle, Durham area here of North Carolina if we can. And we do have ongoing flash flood warnings here that are also of that considerable nature. And luckily for us, we do have some cameras that our friends at WeatherStem provide to us so we can see exactly what is going on right now in that Raleigh area, working to bring those up for you so we can get a glance. But we will actually start, we'll come back to the cameras from our friends at WeatherStem. I'll show you right now this camera from NC State. You can see very wet ground, ongoing flash flooding in this region, and you can of course see the cloud deck right now of those very angry skies in this region. Back out to radar, you can see that this flash flood warning does extend both for the city of Durham, city of Raleigh, city of Wake Forest, and even up towards the north just outside of Henderson. So this would include portions of that I-40, I-85 corridor for anyone who may be traveling or outdoors on this Saturday. That is impacting a lot of the Triangle. Back to the south there, you can see this will eventually move its way towards Interstate 95, and we will watch for that severe thunderstorm watch box to possibly extend into other portions of North Carolina as it makes its way through Fayetteville and out towards I-95. And then, Jared, of course, if this line continues with the strength and intensity it's had during the daytime heating, it could come into your neck of the woods here in not too long.
We will see. You know, that could be interesting. I think the daytime heating is what's going to put a governor on it today, and thank goodness for that. We don't need any rain, but we've had plenty. We're going to get plenty. I'd rather just I would be very happy if we missed out on this. But yeah, it's something that we're watching upstream. But again, in the Charleston metro, chances are pretty good that we're going to be okay here for much of the night. Now, again, near I-95, I think, as you mentioned, you know, I think that there's certainly a better chance of seeing something there. But our rain chances will start to be really coming into play starting tomorrow, getting into Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday right now, based on the current forecast, could be fairly gnarly. So we'll be watching it.
Yeah, you know, certainly I woke up this morning, as I'm sure you did too, with the notion that we had moved into a slight risk for severe weather, a tier 2 out of 3. You can see the yellow there on your screen stretching across a lot of the Piedmont and the Triad and Triangle regions of central North Carolina, extending down into Columbia. This was an upgrade from where we were yesterday. When I went to bed, we were still at a marginal, so we got bumped on up to that slight risk, and it was primarily for the things including wind and flash flooding. Lightning too is a factor, but that's not a consideration when NOAA or the Weather Service decide to or not to go severe, because we get lightning all so often, but it is certainly still a danger. So you can see a 15% chance of damaging winds out there, and we have started to see some evidence of wind damage on top of the flooding. And we'll take another look here at a picture from the National Weather Service. Let's see if I can get this nice and big on the screen. So again, I'm not sharing directly from our private chat that we use to communicate with the National Weather Service and other broadcast meteorologists. But this is, again, a tree down here in South Carolina, right across the roadway. It took power lines down with it as well, too. So on top of the ongoing water threat, we also probably have a good number of power outages. The Blythewood area right now, north of Columbia in South Carolina, seems to be where the bulk of a lot of these early reports are coming in. We just got a additional new video in showing the ongoing considerable flash flooding that is happening in this area. This here is a relatively flat looking area, but you can just see how the water first pooled on the side of the road, then making its way across the roadway surface. So very wet, very difficult to travel right now. You can see those cars working their way through what luckily looks like pretty shallow water on the pavement. But you have to be concerned about the amount of water that is pooling on the side of the road and what that does to the integrity of the road. I think that would be especially true when we go back to the first video we got from the Blythewood area, where you had a smaller, more rural looking road that also had what I would say terrain involved here, where the water is flowing down onto the roadway. That would promote a washout even further. So Jared, a very, very busy day.
I'll tell you, that was looking like it was that road was not looking good. I could see some cracks there. You see, if you take a peek at that, I don't know if that's debris, but that does look like divots there. And I got to tell you, that might be something in the making, something more dangerous. So good on those motorists. Turn around, don't drown.
I'm very happy to see the fact that those motorists did come to a stop there. I'll also say, Jared, as we're talking about where these storms are, there are still some lingering back off to the west of I-77. A new severe thunderstorm warning here popping up over Taylorsville, Love Valley, and Stony Point in the mountains and foothills of North Carolina for Alexander and Iredale counties north of I-40. So even though we've had several rounds of it already come through the I-77 corridor where I am in the greater Charlotte area, we do still have activity popping back up as it's coming out of the foothills. Charlotte, we could get yet even more rain as we head on through the remainder of these evening hours on this Saturday. I'm going to pull up here in just a moment exactly how much rain I've gotten at my house here in Matthews with my Tempest unit on the roof. But I'll tell you, it started earlier and more intense than I was expecting, Jared, because I was on the roof. And I'm supposed to know when the rain's coming, and I got caught in a deluge on the roof.
It happens to the best of us. I get caught outside with an umbrella all the time. It's not something that I would be really, it's not something that I would be too, I wouldn't
embarrassed
beat
about.
Yourself up. I wouldn't beat yourself up. I want to transition real quick to a map here to show you some of the rain totals that we have, and this is 24 hours from MRMS, and so this will get updated as time goes on. But it's worth noting, 4 inches here. That probably is an understatement. That's just in the last day. Go into Charlotte Metro 2.6, 2.5. So again, we've got some pretty decent hot spots for folks who got quite a bit of rain. There's even a spot in Georgia there. So again, we're dealing with just a lot of moisture, and it's really only just beginning.
Yeah, and some folks might be getting in on their first significant heavy rains of the day. We have a new severe thunderstorm warning now over Southern Pines, Aberdeen area of North Carolina, extending as far south to Laurinburg. Not quite into Pembroke or Fayetteville or even Fort Liberty just yet, but you can see. Let's switch this on over here to the Raleigh radar. Not only, of course, can we see the intensity of the rain and the lightning, but let's look at velocity to just peer in at some of those winds. This is certainly going to be a wind threat here, with radar indicated winds right now over portions of Southern Pines at nearly 60 miles per hour, the base tier that you need in order for that severe thunderstorm warning to come on out from the National Weather Service. We can also peer in, we're not expecting a lot today in terms of hail, but I guess it's possible that with the right conditions, we could get enough lift on some of these. That actually is giving us a pretty decent look at vertical integrated liquid here, Jared.
Yeah, that's not bad. Let's see.
The echo top, the height on this storm right now, according to the Raleigh radar, is 52,000 feet. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Not the greatest radar coverage out there because it's in that kind of radar hole we have in the Carolinas. But again, we do have that new severe thunderstorm warning right now out for Pinehurst and Aberdeen. Those are the cities inside of Moore, Scotland, Harnett, Richmond, and Hoke County here under this new severe thunderstorm warning, which again will quickly be approaching that I-95 corridor.
Yeah, and taking a look at some of the radar products that I've got here. Just switch over to that. You can see the max hail size is roughly within that severe, that severe limit. 1 inch is kind of the severe threshold here. So yeah, certainly a hail threat is going to be an issue.
Yeah, what a remarkable development here on this Saturday as this what has really become a squall line. What started off as really kind of popcorn isolated afternoon showers and thunderstorms has formed more into a pretty obvious squall line that is quickly approaching again that I-95 corridor. And we'll watch it and see what it does here over the course of the next few minutes. But one of the areas on the top of your screen is that very populated capital region of North Carolina. And we'll take you back over to the Triangle where Raleigh and Durham are underneath that flash flood warning of a considerable level. And rain is still continuing. So not only are they already under a flash flood warning, but it is just going to continue here for the next few minutes. I'm working on getting some more cameras up, Jared, if you could help me here for just a moment by talking us through some of the things you see on the screen.
Yeah, so let's just take it from the top. First thing is that, again, we'll take a look at the watches in the mornings. That's not what I want. Anyway, let's go back to the radar here. And you can see, there's that squall line that James is talking about. We'll zoom out a little bit more. There's your disturbance up there. You can see it popping off some isolated stuff there. But that's how we are getting the showers and thunderstorms now in the Piedmont here. Some of these are going severe with gusty winds, the main threat. Let's head back and let's just put that to a stop here. Let's go take a look around Columbia. We had a warning out here earlier that was for 70-mile-an-hour winds. That has since been downgraded. However, these storms could still pack a little bit of a punch. And again, we have a considerable flash flood threat with these. We've had some training of the rain there, and that does not help. Same in Raleigh. Here's your considerable flash flood continues here for much of the Raleigh metro area. And that does impact I-40, that does impact I-85, that does impact, that's going to get close to get close to I-95. So we have, quite a bit going on here. Just in the getting in the coastal plain. So we'll see what happens here. And again, when we take a look at the outlook, I'm going to go grab the outlook. There's your slight risk. The risk for severe is pretty low when you get to the coast, but you're right in here. That's where your slight risk is, and this is where we have the severe thunderstorm watch. And this watch will go until 9 o'clock. So again, folks, just something you want to keep an eye on, as we go. And again, the moisture over the next couple days is going to, it's going to really get up there. It's going to be quite a thing once Debbie gets closer. And we do have, Debbie. So once Debbie gets closer, that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And again, if you're just joining us, we've been talking about severe weather in the Carolinas, but we do have now Tropical Storm Debby. As of 5 o'clock, it's a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. But yeah, it's going to take a minute here to get this. It's going to take a little time, and it's going to stall out around here. So more moisture to come. James has got that camera ready to go. Let's take a peek at Raleigh.
I'm actually going to take us first down to Columbia. We're watching that ongoing flash flood threat. This is a USGS camera along the Rocky Branch. We've used it before, and we're using it again. You can see Columbia Police out there right now with portions of Wally Street closed because this is such a frequently prone area to flood. We can actually request control of this camera, and it looks like we've actually been granted access to control this camera, because what I want to see is if we pan off to the left, and bear with me, let's see how fast this actually happens, Jared. I want to see exactly what is behind this road closure, where this police car is. Let's pan back over to the right. We're going to almost do a whole full 360 because I'm coming up on the pole there. And you can see right here, the Rocky Branch here in just the southern side of downtown Columbia. This is quite elevated right now from where it would ideally be. Not only is it high, but it is pretty quick in its flow as it is flowing here. And we've seen, Jared, times where this actually rises all the way up, and where that police car was located would be underwater. And I'm sure that is something they are keeping a close eye on. having seen it before themselves.
Yeah, this is a good preemptive road closure here because this is a situation where it could get dangerous very quickly. And, again, it only takes a couple, it doesn't take much water to knock you down. It only takes 6 inches of water moving fairly fast to knock you down.
Yeah, we could check back in on this a little bit.
So,
I'm looking out in that back retaining wall. There almost seems to be like a log or something right about here where I'm circling with my mouse. I'd be interested to see, even if just in 15 minutes, that this log or whatever it is underwater from continued rising water.
Yep.
All right, we are continuing to monitor here ongoing flash flooding and severe storms across the Carolinas. And as Jared was mentioning, we do have that tier 2 slight risk for storms really across portions of central North Carolina and Midlands and Sand Hills of South Carolina. 15% chance of seeing damaging wind, as we certainly have. But I also want to show folks, this stretches all along the eastern seaboard. If I just take our radar scope and I move out of the Carolinas, you can see the polygons already, even before I switch over to the Sterling, Virginia, the Washington, D.C. radar. Heavy storms right now from this continued front pushing into Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia. And we even have severe thunderstorm warnings right now over portions of the New York City metro area. Nice little kink to that storm, actually, as it makes its way out of the Bronx and into portions of Queens and Nassau County. My father may or may not be watching right now, Jared, from the airport in Charlotte, where he's got a flight back to Long Island tonight. And I told him good luck when he left my house before, because he's going to dance with this thing up the entire seaboard.
Yeah, that's going to make for an interesting night of air travel, that's for sure. And yeah, it's a pretty, again, it's a pretty good trough, and and again, everything is connected, right? Everything's a system. This is what is helping draw Debby up, but Debby is going to miss Debby's going to miss its flight, is what it looks like, and so Debby is going to hang around.
Yeah, right. All this is going to not help us move Debby out when she eventually gets here, come Monday.
Yeah. And again, we've been, we're kind of, we got a lot of weather today, just a lot of weather today. I guess that's the best way I can put it, James. I mean, there's just a lot of weather today.
Yeah.
But looking at taking a peek down here, I'm gonna shoot us over back to Debby for a minute, just because you may have some people who join late. And again, Debby is now, we're calling her Debby. It's a tropical storm. Winds of 40 miles an hour. Here's a satellite in the radar composite, and you can see the bursts of thunderstorms. You can see the hot towers going up near the center. You can see some outflow pattern here, some bands of rain coming ashore with some rotation showing up on some of these. So again, these outer bands are starting to exhibit some rotation over Florida, and again, the expectation is over time is that this is going to move up the gut into the Gulf of Mexico. It is going to strengthen into a hurricane before landfall, and then it could jump out over the Carolinas, and it could hang out, for a while. So that's something that we got to watch over the next few days. Significant rain totals are very possible, along the coast. I mean, we're talking 8, 10, 12 inches of rain possible. So again, folks, I think we want folks to start taking this seriously. We want you to start looking at this as, this is something that could, put you in your house for a few days. Prioritize your comfort more than anything else, I think, is the best thing that we can offer you here. Prioritize your comfort, and I think that's going to get you a long way.
All right, well, bringing it back over to the now. Thank you for that update on Debby. I want to show you new storm photos at Alexander County in North Carolina. This is where an area of severe thunderstorms are continuing here along that I-77 corridor. You can see A few gentlemen trying to clear the roadway of what looks to be a downed tree or down large branch. But we know that they had at least 1 or 2 downed trees, because another photo from that area shows a monstrous tree that had been overturned and uprooted. Look at the size of this tree, Jared. That just goes to show you the saturation of the soil and the strength of the winds associated with these ongoing storms.
Yep, and again, we had a warning earlier in Colombia that was for 70-mile-an-hour winds. So that is not, and the watch indicated that that was a possibility, and certainly possible that that may have come to pass. 60 to 70-mile-an-hour winds. You get enough dry air. There's plenty of dry air aloft, and that's getting transported down. And that dry air is heavier. That dry air is
We may have just lost Jared. And he's not even in the storms yet. But it was making me remember how we initially thought that today was going to be the 4th or 5th day of this heat wave with heat index values over 100 degrees. I mean, I guess if there's any silver lining, it's that the temperatures didn't get as boiling hot as they did in the last few days, thanks to the cloud cover and the rain. Of course, though, it was all of that heat that, when triggered by this approaching cold front, put us into this scenario today where we had lots of moisture in the atmosphere just ready to be triggered. I did just get a message from Jared. He did just lose power. He does not know why. He is in Charleston. It is not yet storming there. Somebody forgot to pay a power bill. But I know that Jared will be on his Charleston weather platforms throughout the evening, keeping an eye on storms. We here at the Carolina Weather Group will be keeping an eye on both North Carolina and South Carolina. You can stay up to date with real-time storm warnings, live cameras, and radar streaming for free on our Carolina Weather Net. It's available wherever you watch YouTube, from your phone to your TV. That's up right now. We're going to take you over to that in just a moment. And we'll also be keeping a close eye on Tropical Storm Debby, forecast to become a Category 1 hurricane with a landfall in Florida on Sunday, and then lingering into the Carolinas for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A flash flooding threat from what will be a slowly dying Tropical Storm Debby will continue throughout much of the week next week. And I hope you'll subscribe to the Carolina Weather Group wherever you're watching or listening to us right now in order to stay up to date. This has been a special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte on behalf of Charles Smith in Charleston. I appreciate you trusting us and joining us for this special edition of our show. We'll be back with updates in the days ahead, and of course, every Wednesday night, talking weather, science, technology, and more across the Carolinas.